The first thing my brother said after the lawyer finished reading our father's will was, "Well, I guess Dad knew who could actually handle money." Then he smiled at me. Right there in the conference room. Like stealing from me was somehow proof of maturity. I remember staring at him across that polished oak table while rain hit the windows behind us in slow, uneven streaks. My father had been dead exactly 12 days, and somehow my older brother Garrett already looked comfortable in his chair again. Relaxed. Confident. Guy practically radiated ownership. Meanwhile I sat there holding a copy of the will that made absolutely no sense. According to the document, Garrett inherited our father's construction company, 2 commercial properties, and almost all liquid assets. I inherited Dad's old watch collection and a fishing cabin in Missouri that barely had working plumbing. That was it. Honestly, grief does strange things to your instincts. Part of me almost accepted it immediately because disappointment had been my role in that family for years. Garrett was the golden son. Always had been. Loud handshake. Loud opinions. Loud suits. Dad respected that kind of thing. Me? I handled operations quietly behind the scenes at Mercer Construction for almost 14 years. Payroll issues. Vendor disputes. Scheduling disasters. The actual work that kept projects moving while Garrett played businessman in expensive jackets. But because I wasn't loud about it, nobody really noticed. That happens in families sometimes. The dependable person slowly becomes invisible. Garrett leaned back in his chair beside his attorney. "You got the cabin at least," he said casually. "Dad knew you liked quiet places." Yeah. That didn't sit right. Not because of the money. Because my father wasn't careless with details. Especially financial ones. The man tracked utility expenses in handwritten notebooks until the week he died. And somehow I was supposed to believe he intentionally left 90% of everything to Garrett? No chance. But I stayed calm. That part mattered. People underestimate patience because they confuse it with weakness. I learned long ago they're different things entirely. After the meeting ended, Garrett stopped me near the elevators. "No hard feelings, okay?" he said. Dad trusted me with bigger responsibilities. I just nodded slowly like, "Sure, whatever." Then I went home to my wife. Lena took one look at my face and said, "Something's wrong." We sat in silence for a minute at our kitchen table while she read through the will paperwork carefully. Finally she looked up. "This doesn't sound like your dad." Exactly. That was the first real crack in everything. Because Lena didn't romanticize my father. She knew he could be cold, demanding, emotionally distant. But she also knew he respected fairness. And this? This felt performative. Like somebody trying too hard to sound logical. Over the next few weeks, Garrett stepped fully into ownership mode. New office furniture. Big meetings. Aggressive expansion plans. Guy thought he owned the room now. The problem? He barely understood how the company actually functioned. Mercer Construction looked successful from the outside because people like me spent years quietly preventing disasters before they reached daylight. Garrett thought revenue came from confidence. I knew it came from relationships. Subcontractors trusted me. Site managers called me first. Vendors extended deadlines because I'd spent years treating them like human beings instead of disposable labor. Garrett never understood that. About a month after the funeral, I drove out to the fishing cabin Dad left me. Small place near Table Rock Lake. Dust everywhere. Old wood smell. Tiny kitchen with crooked cabinets. Honestly, it looked forgotten. At first I figured Dad just wanted me to have somewhere peaceful. Then I noticed something strange. One loose floorboard beneath the bedroom dresser. Inside was a sealed metal lockbox. And suddenly my heartbeat got real loud. The box contained documents, property records, old company contracts, and one handwritten letter addressed to me. My father's handwriting looked shakier than I remembered. Nolan. If you're reading this, then Garrett ignored what I asked him to do. There it was. Everything slowed down after that. According to the letter, my father discovered months before his death that Garrett had quietly manipulated several company transfers while Dad was heavily medicated during cancer treatment. Nothing dramatic enough for police, but enough to shift ownership percentages and financial control toward himself before the final will revision. Dad found out too late. The letter included copies of original agreements, unsigned revisions, and instructions for our longtime family attorney, Diane Keller. One problem though. Garrett fired Diane 6 days after Dad died. That part almost made me laugh. Because suddenly everything made sense. The rushed meetings. The confidence. The pressure to finalize estate transfers quickly. Garrett wasn't grieving. He was managing exposure. I sat there in that dusty cabin reading the letter 3 separate times while lake water hit the docks outside softly. And honestly, the anger surprised me less than the sadness. Because some part of me had spent years hoping Garrett's arrogance was mostly performance. Turns out it wasn't. Lena listened quietly while I explained everything that night. Then she asked the most important question. What do you want to do? Not what should I do? What did I want? Big difference. I thought about that a while. Finally I said, I want the truth documented. That mattered more than revenge. Over the next month, Diane Keller helped me quietly rebuild the paper trail. Financial timestamps. Ownership discrepancies. Email archives. Garrett made one major mistake. He assumed nobody patient enough existed to check his work carefully. That's the danger with arrogant people. They rush cleanup because they mistake confidence for intelligence. Then came the board meeting. Garrett scheduled it himself to announce a major expansion loan using company assets as collateral. Huge room downtown. Investors present. Department heads too. Garrett stood near the projector screen talking fast and confidently while expensive cufflinks flashed under the lights. Same performance as always. Then Diane Keller walked into the room. I'll never forget Garrett's face. Not panic exactly. Recognition. Like his body understood consequences 1 second before his mind caught up. The room went silent immediately. Garrett straightened awkwardly. Diane, he said carefully. I thought you retired. She ignored him completely and handed documents to the investors first. Smart move. Then she looked at Garrett calmly. Before this meeting continues, she said, everyone here deserves accurate ownership disclosures. Heavy silence. You could actually hear the air conditioning humming above us. Garrett glanced toward me finally. And there it was. That moment. The exact second he realized I knew everything. His confidence cracked fast after that. Investors started asking questions immediately. Transfer dates. Authorization signatures. Timeline discrepancies. Garrett tried talking over people at first. Classic Garrett. But panic kept slipping into his voice around the edges. The louder he became, the guiltier he sounded. Finally one investor closed the file in front of him and said quietly, you represented this company under false pretenses. That line hit harder than yelling would've. Garrett looked toward me again. You planned this? I honestly almost smiled. No, I said calmly. Dad did. Silence. Complete silence. Because deep down, Garrett knew that was true. The board froze all expansion activity that same afternoon. Independent auditors got involved within days. Nothing criminal happened. But Garrett lost operational control immediately. Turns out investors hate uncertainty almost as much as dishonesty. 3 weeks later, I visited my father's grave alone. Cold morning. Wind moving through dead grass quietly. For a long time I just stood there thinking about how complicated love becomes inside certain families. My father trusted the loud son publicly. But in the end? He trusted the quiet son to finish the truth carefully. That mattered. A few days later, Garrett showed up at my house unexpectedly. No expensive suit this time. No performance. Just tired. He stood awkwardly near the porch railing and said, "I didn't think Dad respected you more." Funny thing was, I don't think he did. Not more. Just differently. I looked at my brother for a second and said quietly, "You spent so much time trying to own everything, you forgot some things are supposed to be earned." Then I closed the door gently. And honestly, that felt better than anger ever would have.